Welcome everyone to English Mindshift. Let everything go for a minute, slow down, and allow yourself to think about one simple but powerful question. What if one small daily habit had the power to literally reshape your brain? Not metaphorically, not emotionally, but physically. Modern neuroscience is beginning to reveal something fascinating. Reading does not simply give you information. It actually changes the way your brain works. Many of the smartest thinkers in history shared one powerful habit. They read constantly. Investors, scientists, entrepreneurs, philosophers, people known for deep thinking almost always built a strong relationship with books. But this raises an interesting question. Why do some of the most successful and intelligent people in the world spend so much time reading, even in an age where information is faster than ever? Today we live in a world of short videos, endless scrolling, and instant content. Everything is quick. Everything is designed to grab attention for just a few seconds. Yet the greatest thinkers still choose the slowest method of learning, reading. So today, we are going to explore something powerful. The hidden neuroscience behind reading. You will discover how reading strengthens focus, builds intelligence, improves emotional understanding, and gradually rewires the brain itself. And by the end of this journey, you may start to see books in a completely different way. Section 1. Your brain on scrolling versus books. Let's begin with something almost all of us experience every single day. Scrolling through our phones. Imagine the first moments after waking up in the morning. Many people reach for their phone before even leaving the bed. A quick look at one notification turns into a few minutes on social media. One post leads to another. A short video appears. Then another video starts automatically. A new notification pops up. A message arrives. The brain jumps again. Within a few minutes, the mind has already switched between dozens of tiny pieces of information. This pattern feels normal in the modern world. But from a neuroscience perspective, something very interesting is happening inside the brain. Every time a new post appears on the screen, the brain experiences a small burst of dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical connected with motivation, reward, and pleasure. It is the same system that encourages us to repeat behaviors that feel exciting or satisfying. Social media platforms are designed in a way that constantly triggers these small dopamine rewards. Every swipe brings something new, something unexpected, something that might be entertaining. Because the brain enjoys novelty and reward, it quickly learns to crave this pattern. The mind becomes used to fast stimulation and constant change, but there is an important side effect that many people do not notice. When the brain constantly jumps between short pieces of information, attention becomes fragmented. Instead of staying with one idea long enough to explore it deeply, the mind learns to move quickly from one stimulus to another. The brain begins expecting new input every few seconds. Over time, this can slowly train the brain to prefer speed over depth. This is one reason many people today feel restless when trying to focus on something longer, like reading a chapter of a book or studying a complex idea. The mind has been trained to expect rapid stimulation rather than sustained thinking. Now let's compare this experience with reading a book. When you open a book, the brain enters a completely different environment. There are no flashing notifications, no endless feed, no algorithm pushing the next piece of content. Instead, the mind must slow down and follow a single line of thought. Sentences connect to form paragraphs. Paragraphs develop ideas. The reader must imagine scenes, understand arguments, and connect concepts over time. In other words, reading forces the brain to stay with one mental pathway longer. This is a very different cognitive exercise. While scrolling trains the brain for speed and stimulation, reading trains the brain for patience, depth, and reflection. A helpful analogy is to think about food. Scrolling through social media is like eating mental fast food. It is quick, stimulating, and immediately satisfying. But it does not provide the deep nourishment the brain needs for long-term cognitive strength. Reading, on the other hand, is more like a slow and nutritious meal for the mind. It requires a little more effort. It requires time and attention. But it provides something far more valuable: sustained mental engagement. And this difference matters more than many people realize. The brain adapts to whatever it practices repeatedly. If it practices rapid switching and short bursts of stimulation, it becomes very good at scanning information quickly, but not necessarily at thinking deeply. If it practices sustained reading and long attention, it gradually becomes better at concentration, comprehension, and complex reasoning. In other words, the daily habits of our attention are quietly shaping the way our brain operates, and this simple choice, scrolling or reading, may be training two very different types of minds. Section 2. The Neuroscience of Deep Reading. When you open a book and begin reading deeply, something remarkable begins happening inside your brain. Reading may look like a quiet activity from the outside, but inside the mind it becomes a highly active neurological process. Different regions of the brain begin working together like a coordinated team. Each region plays a different role, and together they transform simple words on a page into complex thoughts, images, and ideas. One of the most important brain areas involved in deep reading is the prefrontal cortex. This region sits at the front of the brain and is responsible for higher-level thinking. It helps with reasoning, decision-making, planning, and evaluating information. When you read a thoughtful book, you are rarely just absorbing words. You are analyzing arguments, comparing ideas, questioning conclusions, and connecting new information with what you already know. All of these activities activate the prefrontal cortex. In other words, reading invites the brain to think. At the same time, the language centers of the brain are working intensely. These regions decode letters and symbols and transform them into meaningful language. Words become sentences. Sentences become ideas. Gradually, those ideas begin forming a clear message in the mind. This process may feel automatic for experienced readers, but neurologically it is extremely complex. The brain must coordinate visual recognition, language comprehension, and memory at the same time. Another important system activated during reading is the brain's attention network. This network allows us to stay focused on a single task for an extended period of time. When someone reads a book for 20 or 30 minutes without interruption, the attention system is continuously engaged. The brain practices maintaining concentration and filtering out distractions. This is important because attention behaves much like a muscle. If it is rarely used for long periods, it becomes weaker. But when it is exercised regularly, it becomes stronger and more stable. Deep reading acts like a training session for this cognitive muscle. Think of it as a mental gym for the brain. Just as lifting weights strengthens physical muscles, sustained reading strengthens concentration, patience, and analytical thinking. At first, this mental workout may feel challenging. Many people notice that their mind begins wandering after only a few minutes of reading. Thoughts drift toward messages, tasks, or other distractions. This reaction is completely normal. The brain has simply become accustomed to constant stimulation and quick information switching. But something interesting happens when a person continues practicing deep reading. Gradually, the brain begins adapting. The attention network becomes more comfortable staying with one idea for longer periods. The mind learns to follow longer arguments, understand deeper concepts, and process more complex information. Over time, this ability produces powerful cognitive advantages. People who regularly practice deep reading often develop stronger comprehension skills. They can understand complicated ideas more easily and think more carefully about problems. Their brain becomes better at connecting information, evaluating evidence, and forming thoughtful conclusions. In a world filled with rapid information and constant distractions, this ability to think slowly and deeply is becoming increasingly rare, and that is precisely why it is so valuable. Deep reading does not simply fill the brain with knowledge, it trains the brain to become a better thinking machine. Section 3. How reading builds neural pathways. The human brain is one of the most adaptable systems in nature. Unlike a machine that stays fixed once it is built, the brain is constantly changing and reorganizing itself. Scientists call this remarkable ability neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity simply means that the brain can reshape its own structure based on experience, learning, and repeated behavior. Every thought you think, every skill you practice, and every idea you explore leaves a small mark on the brain. Over time, these marks grow into stronger connections between brain cells. To understand this process more clearly, imagine the brain as a large and busy city. Inside this city are billions of neurons. Neurons are specialized brain cells that communicate with each other through electrical and chemical signals. If neurons are like buildings in a city, then neural pathways are like the roads that connect those buildings. When a new skill is learned, the brain begins building a small road between certain neurons. At first, this road may be narrow and slow, like a small dirt path in the forest. Signals can travel through it, but not very efficiently. However, every time the brain repeats the same activity, that path becomes stronger. More signals travel through it. The connection becomes faster. Eventually, that small path can turn into a wide and efficient highway inside the brain. Reading plays a powerful role in building these neural highways. When you read, your brain must coordinate several different abilities at the same time. Your visual system recognizes letters and words. Your language centers interpret meaning. Your memory retrieves related information you already know. Your imagination creates mental images. And your reasoning system evaluates ideas and arguments. All of these processes must communicate with one another continuously. This constant communication strengthens connections between neurons. In neuroscience terms, reading increases brain connectivity. It encourages different brain networks to work together smoothly. Think of it as building more bridges between different neighborhoods in the brain. The more bridges that exist, the easier it becomes for ideas to travel across the mind. This is why experienced readers often appear to think more clearly. Their brains have developed strong networks that allow information to move quickly between memory, language, and reasoning. Another fascinating aspect of neural pathways is repetition. The brain strengthens the connections that it uses frequently. Pathways that are used often become faster and more stable, while pathways that are rarely used can gradually weaken. This means that daily habits play an enormous role in shaping the brain's architecture. If someone regularly engages in activities that require deep thinking, such as reading books, reflecting on ideas, and connecting concepts, then the neural pathways supporting those abilities grow stronger. Over time, this produces noticeable cognitive benefits. Understanding becomes faster. Ideas connect more naturally. Complex information becomes easier to organize and remember. In contrast, if the brain mostly practices short bursts of attention and rapid information switching, it becomes optimized for quick scanning rather than deep reasoning. Reading therefore acts as a powerful training tool for the brain's learning system. Every chapter you read strengthens the pathways responsible for comprehension, imagination, and analysis. Gradually, these strengthened pathways create something very valuable, a brain that can process information with greater clarity and depth. And the most remarkable part is that this process does not require extraordinary talent. It simply requires repetition. Page by page, day by day, the brain quietly rewires itself. Over months and years, these small changes accumulate into a more efficient and more intelligent thinking system. Section 4. The Emotional Intelligence Advantage. Most people believe that reading mainly improves knowledge. They imagine that books simply fill the brain with facts, ideas, or information. But neuroscience and psychological research reveal another fascinating effect of reading, especially when it comes to understanding people. Reading can significantly strengthen emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize emotions, understand other people's perspectives, and respond wisely in social situations. It is the skill that helps someone become a better communicator, a better friend, a stronger leader, and a more thoughtful human being. Surprisingly, one of the most powerful ways to develop this ability is through stories. When you read a novel or a story, something unique happens in your brain. You are not simply observing characters from a distance. Instead, the brain begins simulating their experiences. As the story unfolds, your mind tries to understand what the characters are thinking, what they are feeling, and why they are making certain decisions. You imagine their fears. You understand their hopes. You witness their mistakes and their growth. In neuroscience, this process is closely connected to a concept known as theory of mind. Theory of mind is the brain's ability to understand that other people have their own thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and intentions that may be different from our own. This ability is fundamental to human social life. Without it, communication, cooperation, and empathy would become extremely difficult. Every time a reader enters a fictional world, the brain practices this ability. When a character faces a difficult decision, the reader begins predicting what might happen next. When a character experiences sadness, joy, betrayal, or hope, the reader mentally experiences those emotions as well. This mental simulation activates what neuroscientists call empathy networks in the brain. These networks are responsible for emotional processing and social cognition, the systems that help us interpret human behavior. In other words, reading stories becomes a training ground for understanding people. The brain repeatedly practices recognizing emotions, interpreting motivations, and imagining perspectives different from its own. Over time, this repeated practice strengthens the neural circuits involved in empathy and social awareness. This is one reason researchers often find that regular readers tend to score higher on tests measuring empathy and emotional understanding. Their brains have spent many hours rehearsing complex social situations through stories. Think about it this way. A single novel may allow a reader to experience dozens of different lives. They may see the world through the eyes of a scientist, a leader, a struggling student, a historical figure, or someone living in a completely different culture. Each story becomes a small exercise in perspective. The reader learns that people think differently, feel differently, and respond differently to the same situations. This realization builds a deeper understanding of human nature, and this understanding becomes extremely valuable in real life. People with stronger emotional intelligence tend to navigate social situations more effectively. They listen more carefully. They communicate more clearly. They understand conflict more deeply and respond with greater patience. These abilities are essential in leadership, teamwork, and meaningful relationships. In many professional environments today, emotional intelligence is considered just as important as technical knowledge. The ability to understand people often determines how effectively someone can inspire, guide, or collaborate with others. Books quietly develop this skill. While reading, the brain is not only learning about ideas, it is learning about people. page by page, story by story. The mind practices empathy, perspective, and emotional awareness. And over time, this practice transforms the reader into someone who understands the human experience more deeply. In a world where relationships shape nearly every part of life, from careers to friendships to families, this hidden advantage of reading may be one of its most powerful gifts. Section 5. The Mental Models of Smart Thinkers. Another hidden power of reading is the creation of mental models. While this phrase may sound technical, the idea behind it is actually simple. Mental models are frameworks the brain uses to understand how the world works. They are like internal maps that help us interpret events, solve problems, and make decisions. Every time you encounter a new idea in a book, your brain is not just storing information. It is building these internal maps. For example, psychology helps explain why people behave the way they do. History reveals patterns in societies and how decisions shape the future. Science explains the laws that govern the physical world. Philosophy explores deeper questions about meaning, truth, and human purpose. Each subject offers a different lens for understanding reality. When someone reads only within a single subject, their understanding of the world can remain narrow. But when a person reads across many fields, psychology, history, science, economics, philosophy, and biography, something remarkable begins happening inside the mind. Ideas start connecting. The brain begins recognizing patterns that are invisible to someone who has only studied one area. A concept from psychology might explain a historical event. An idea from biology might inspire a solution in business. A principle from philosophy might influence how someone approaches leadership or personal decisions. This ability to combine ideas from multiple fields is often seen among highly intelligent thinkers. Instead of thinking in isolated boxes, they build networks of understanding. Books become the bridges connecting these different ideas. Imagine knowledge as a vast landscape. Each subject, science, history, economics, literature, is like a different region of that landscape. When you read broadly, you begin traveling between these regions. Gradually, you start noticing how they connect. A historical event might suddenly make more sense when viewed through the lens of human psychology. A scientific discovery might raise philosophical questions about ethics and responsibility. A business strategy might become clearer when you understand the patterns of human behavior. These connections create what thinkers often call mental models. Mental models allow the brain to simplify complexity. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by information, the mind begins organizing ideas into meaningful structures. For instance, a reader who understands basic psychological principles might recognize why certain arguments persuade people. Someone familiar with historical patterns may see warning signs in political or economic trends. A reader who studies systems thinking might understand how small actions can produce large consequences over time. These insights do not come from memorizing facts. They emerge from connecting ideas, and reading is one of the most powerful tools for building these connections. Over time, the reader develops an internal library of models for understanding the world. Each book adds another piece to this system. Eventually, this creates something extremely valuable: perspective. Instead of reacting quickly to situations, the reader begins analyzing them through multiple lenses. They ask deeper questions. They consider alternative explanations. They see patterns where others only see isolated events. This ability often gives thoughtful readers a quiet advantage in many areas of life. They may solve problems more creatively. They may anticipate challenges earlier. They may make decisions with greater clarity because they understand the deeper forces shaping a situation. In this way, reading does far more than provide knowledge. It builds the mental frameworks that allow knowledge to become wisdom. And over time, these frameworks help transform scattered information into a coherent understanding of the world. Section 6. The compound effect of knowledge. One of the most powerful yet invisible benefits of reading is something called the compound effect of knowledge. To understand this idea, it helps to think about how compound interest works in finance. When someone invests a small amount of money regularly, the growth may appear slow at first. In the beginning, the progress feels almost invisible. But over time, the interest begins generating more interest, and eventually, the growth becomes dramatic. Knowledge grows in a very similar way. When someone begins reading regularly, the first few days may not feel life-changing. You read a few pages. You learn a few ideas. Maybe you remember a small insight from a chapter. On the surface, the change seems small. But inside the brain, something important is happening. Each new idea becomes a building block for future understanding. At first, these ideas exist separately. A concept from a psychology book may sit in your memory without much connection to other knowledge. A historical story may seem interesting, but not immediately useful. A scientific principle may feel abstract. However, as reading continues over weeks and months, these ideas begin interacting with one another. A concept you read today might suddenly connect with something you learned 3 months earlier. A pattern you noticed in a biography might explain a leadership decision in a business book. A philosophical question might reshape how you interpret a historical event. This is where the compound effect truly begins. Instead of gaining knowledge in isolated pieces, the brain starts forming networks of understanding. Each new book increases the value of the books you have already read, because new connections become possible. Imagine your mind as a growing library. At the beginning, the shelves contain only a few books, but as the collection grows, the number of possible connections between ideas increases dramatically. One idea can link to 2 others, then 5 others, then 10. Eventually, the mind begins to recognize patterns automatically. This is why experienced readers often have moments where a new idea suddenly makes perfect sense. Their brain already contains the supporting knowledge needed to understand it deeply. Over time, this accumulation creates a major shift in thinking. A consistent reader does not simply memorize information. Instead, they develop a richer mental framework for understanding the world. Problems are viewed from multiple angles. Decisions are evaluated more carefully. Questions become deeper and more thoughtful. This transformation rarely happens overnight. It grows slowly through repeated exposure to ideas. 20 minutes of reading today may not feel significant, but 20 minutes every day for a year becomes more than 100 hours of focused learning. Over 5 years, that becomes hundreds of hours of intellectual training. During that time, the brain is constantly absorbing new perspectives, discovering patterns, and strengthening its ability to reason. This is why many of the world's most thoughtful leaders, scientists, and innovators share one common habit: they read consistently for many years. Their advantage does not come from a single book. It comes from the compound effect of thousands of ideas slowly building upon one another. Eventually, this process creates a powerful thinking system inside the brain. When faced with a complex challenge, the reader has access to a wide network of knowledge. Past ideas rise to the surface. Patterns become visible. Solutions appear that might not be obvious to someone with less accumulated perspective. In this way, reading becomes much more than a simple hobby. It becomes a long-term investment in the architecture of the mind. And just like compound interest in finance, the earlier and more consistently you begin, the more powerful the results become over time. Section 7. Focus. The superpower of the future. In the modern world, focus is quietly becoming one of the rarest abilities a human being can develop. Every day our attention is pulled in dozens of different directions. Notifications appear on our phones. Messages arrive constantly. Videos autoplay. News updates refresh every minute. Digital platforms compete aggressively for one limited resource, our attention. Because of this environment, many people have unknowingly trained their brains to operate in short bursts of concentration. The mind jumps from task to task, rarely staying with one idea for very long. Even when someone tries to concentrate, the urge to check the phone or switch activities can appear within minutes. From a neurological perspective, this pattern gradually reshapes the brain's attention system. The brain becomes very good at scanning information quickly, but it becomes less comfortable sustaining deep concentration. Tasks that require long thinking, such as studying complex ideas, solving difficult problems, or writing thoughtfully, begin to feel mentally exhausting. This is where reading offers a powerful advantage. Deep reading trains the opposite habit. When someone sits with a book for 30 or 40 minutes, the brain begins practicing sustained attention. The reader must follow a continuous stream of ideas. Sentences connect to paragraphs. Paragraphs connect to chapters. The mind learns to stay engaged with a single intellectual journey. At first, this can feel challenging. The brain may still crave stimulation. Thoughts may wander. The temptation to check a notification may appear again and again. But each time the reader gently returns attention to the page, something important is happening inside the brain. The attention networks are being trained. Neuroscientists often describe attention as a limited cognitive resource. Just like physical energy, it can be strengthened through practice. Activities that require sustained mental engagement gradually build the brain's ability to remain focused. Reading is one of the most effective ways to practice this skill because it requires the mind to stay active without constant external stimulation. The reader must generate meaning internally rather than simply reacting to flashing images or short clips. Over time, this practice produces remarkable results. People who read regularly often find that their concentration improves not only during reading, but also in other areas of life. They can work longer without distraction. They can follow complex discussions more easily. They can think through difficult problems with greater patience. This ability is becoming increasingly valuable in today's knowledge-driven world. Researchers studying productivity frequently observe that individuals capable of deep focus tend to produce higher quality work. They solve problems more effectively, generate more creative ideas, and learn complicated skills more efficiently. In many professions, science, engineering, writing, leadership, research, design, the capacity to concentrate deeply is one of the most important cognitive advantages a person can have. And yet, because of constant digital distraction, this skill is becoming less common. This means something interesting is happening. While many people are unintentionally weakening their focus through endless digital stimulation, readers are quietly strengthening theirs. Each reading session becomes a small training exercise for the brain's attention system. Page after page, the mind practices patience, reflection, and sustained thinking. Over months and years, this repeated practice creates a powerful cognitive difference. In a future where information is abundant but attention is scarce, the ability to focus deeply may become one of the greatest intellectual superpowers a person can develop. And reading remains one of the most reliable ways to build that superpower. Section 8. Curiosity and lifelong learning. Another transformation occurs when reading becomes a habit. Curiosity begins to grow in ways that can quietly reshape your mind. Books often introduce ideas that lead to new questions. Those questions lead to new books. And the cycle continues, creating a powerful learning loop that continuously stimulates the brain. Reading encourages the brain to seek deeper understanding rather than quick answers. The reader is no longer a passive consumer of information. Instead, they become an active explorer of ideas, investigating, questioning, and connecting knowledge across different areas. This habit fosters an insatiable curiosity that extends beyond the pages of books. A reader may begin to notice patterns in history, find connections between science and philosophy, or understand human behavior in a richer way. Each new idea sparks the desire to learn more, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of discovery. Curiosity also strengthens critical thinking. When a reader questions assumptions, compares perspectives, and seeks evidence, they are training their mind to evaluate information more rigorously. Over time, this builds not just knowledge but wisdom. Additionally, curiosity nurtures adaptability. In a rapidly changing world, the ability to remain open, flexible, and willing to learn is invaluable. The lifelong learner embraces new technologies, novel ideas, and diverse viewpoints because their brain has been conditioned to find growth and insight in every opportunity to explore. Neuroscience shows that this continual engagement strengthens neural networks related to learning, memory, and problem-solving. Each new question or idea sparks neural activity, forming new connections and reinforcing existing pathways. The more one reads and questions, the more the brain becomes a fertile ground for insight and innovation. Over a lifetime, this continuous learning process builds extraordinary intellectual depth. The curious mind becomes a mind that not only knows more, but can connect ideas in unique ways, see patterns others miss, and approach challenges with creative and informed strategies. Section 9. The Brain Rewiring Challenge. Now let us turn all this knowledge into a powerful, actionable experiment for your mind. A 30-day brain rewiring challenge designed to transform the way you think. The idea is simple but highly effective. Every day, commit to reading for at least 20 to 30 minutes. But not just any reading. Choose books that challenge your thinking, push your assumptions, or introduce entirely new perspectives. Venture across different subjects: psychology, science, history, philosophy, or biographies. Each subject acts as a new workout for your brain, strengthening different cognitive muscles and neural pathways. Start small if necessary, but be consistent. Set aside a fixed time every day when distractions are minimal. Avoid your phone, notifications, and other interruptions. Treat this as a sacred time for your mind to exercise and grow. At first, you may encounter resistance. The brain is used to rapid stimulation and quick rewards. It may crave distractions, wander, or feel restless. This is completely normal. Think of it as mental inertia. The neurons are accustomed to old pathways, and forming new ones requires patience and repetition. As the days pass, you will notice subtle but meaningful changes. Focus will begin to sharpen. The ability to follow complex arguments and maintain attention will improve. Connections between ideas from different books or subjects will start forming more naturally. Your thinking may become clearer, more structured, and more innovative. Even your conversations can shift. With a growing mental library of ideas, stories, and perspectives, you will find yourself contributing more thoughtfully. Empathy and emotional intelligence may also improve, as you've practiced understanding multiple viewpoints and imagining other people's experiences through fiction and narrative nonfiction. Problem-solving becomes more intuitive. With stronger neural connections and a richer array of mental models, you will approach challenges with greater clarity and creativity. Tasks that once felt complex may now seem more manageable, as your brain can draw upon the accumulated frameworks and insights you have been building. Document your journey. Keep a journal of new ideas, insights, and connections you notice each day. This not only reinforces learning, but also allows you to track your cognitive growth over time. Reflection is a powerful multiplier of the benefits of deep reading. By the end of 30 days, the experiment may feel transformative. You will have cultivated the habit of deep thinking, strengthened attention networks, built new neural pathways, and nurtured curiosity and empathy. But this is only the beginning. 30 days is a start, a foundation on which to build a lifelong habit of reading and learning. Remember, this challenge is more than a routine. It is an intentional design for your brain. Every page read, every idea considered, and every connection made strengthens your cognitive architecture. You are training your brain to think deeply, clearly, and creatively, equipping yourself with the intellectual tools to navigate a complex world. Final reflection: your brain, your future. Welcome, everyone. As we reach the conclusion of this journey, take a moment to reflect on what you have learned. Reading is far more than a pastime. It is a deliberate practice that shapes your brain and, ultimately, your life. Each book you open, each page you turn is not merely filling your mind with information. It is rewiring your neural pathways, strengthening focus, building empathy, and cultivating the mental models that guide your decisions. Think of your brain as a living structure. Every habit you maintain, every thought you entertain, every idea you explore contributes to its growth and flexibility. The habits you form today will echo in the choices you make tomorrow. By dedicating even a small amount of time each day to reading, you are making a profound investment in the architecture of your mind. You are cultivating clarity of thought, depth of understanding, and a perspective that allows you to navigate challenges with wisdom and insight. This is not a theoretical concept. It is a tangible, measurable process. Neuroscience shows that deep, focused reading activates attention networks, prefrontal regions, language centers, and empathy circuits. Over time, these repeated activations reshape your brain, creating the cognitive tools you need to analyze problems, understand people, and generate creative solutions. The path is gradual, but the rewards are profound. The small, consistent habit of reading compounds into intelligence, insight, and resilience. Each page builds upon the last, connecting ideas, expanding understanding, and enhancing the way you perceive the world. Your mind becomes sharper, your thinking clearer, and your ability to understand complex situations stronger. As you close this video and return to your day, remember this truth: the future of your intelligence is being written by the habits you practice today. Choose reading. Choose growth. Choose to shape your brain deliberately. With each page, you are not just learning, you are transforming the very way you think, feel, and experience the world.